Love, exciting and new.
Hello, Hannah Waddingham here. Have you seen the fabulous new Sun Princess? World-class entertainment, exceptional dining, and the greatest pizza ever.
It's a love.
Don't miss our Come Aboard sale with up to 40% off and free room upgrades. Visit princess.com or call your travel advisor to book. Princess Cruises. Terms and restrictions apply. Offer ends 2/28/25. Ships of Bermudan and British Registry.
Auto insurance can all seem the same until it comes time to use it. So don't get stuck paying more for less coverage. Switch to USAA Auto Insurance and you could start saving money in no time. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply.
If you're a husband looking to build a strong and long-lasting marriage without having to learn things the hard way, then this episode is for you. Today, we're unpacking 3 key things that are critical in growing the strength, intimacy, and trust in your marriage. Let's go. Welcome back to the Husband Coach's Corner. I'm your host, Chris Scott, and yes, today we are talking about 3 critical things, or keys, if you will, to building a strong and long-lasting marriage. Now, I'm not one of those people that's going to sugarcoat it. Marriage is a huge commitment. It is a huge commitment, and we want to make sure that the things that we're doing as husbands are actually building that marriage. Now, here's what I'll tell you about marriage in itself. All right. These are statistics. I have a link down in the description or the show notes. So wherever you're capturing or listening to this audio, you'll be able to go check out that link. But here's the deal. 43% for first-time marriages end in divorce. All right. 60% for second-time marriages end in divorce, and 73% for those who are married 3 times or more. All right. Now, I don't want any man who listens to this podcast to become a statistic. That's just not what we want to do here in this community, which is why we want to find ways to love our wife every single day. And because of that, we're becoming better men in the process. Now, for all of these first-time marriages, a lot of the things probably could have been avoided, and it didn't have to end in divorce. But for whatever reason, it did. So what do we know about these stats? Well, the more times you get married, the higher likely you are to get divorced. Now, I don't put a whole lot of stock or, weight to circumstantial numbers like that, right? Because every relationship is different. Every marriage is different. But what this does show is that there's a trend, all right? And trends usually don't lie. All right. The first time that you get married, you're almost at 50%. It's like 50-50. And this is why we want to grow as husbands so we can lead our wives effectively. And then obviously, the more times you get married, the more likely it is to end in divorce. I don't know why. I'm not even going to try to speculate why that is. Now, if you see me looking off to the right, it's because my notes are to the right side of me, and that's what I want to stay on top of to make sure I'm bringing you the best value. But here's the deal. If you get married more than once, your chances of divorce, they just go up. And that's why we want to focus on 3 things that are going to help us stay committed. All right. Now, here are some of the things that are leading to divorce, at least based off of this article. The first one is lack of commitment. Second one, infidelity. Third is domestic abuse. Fourth is excessive arguing and conflict. And then the 5th is financial problems. Now, the cool thing is the 3 things that I'm going to be talking about with you today, they're all going to address one or multiple of these things. So that way you don't have to kind of dive in or fall into the trap or whatever is leading to divorce. Like if that's something that you struggle with. Now, this isn't like some magic bullet that's going to fix a problem that you're having. If you're having issues like any of the ones that I mentioned, you're definitely going to need to do a deep assessment of your marriage. However, I think that these 3 things that we're going to be talking about today are 100% going to help you get through some of those issues, or at least get you started on the right track to get through some of those issues. And I guess I should pause here for a second and just say that most of the time when I make these podcasts, it's directed purely towards the husbands. But today, this one is going to be more of a couple oriented thing. And I am going to focus a little bit more on how you can really grow as a husband. But these are going to be relatively universal for just good growth marriage advice, if you will. All right. So let's go over the three things. First one, open and honest communication. Second, mutual respect and appreciation. And third, shared values and goals. Those are the three things that are going to help you combat the things that we were talking about earlier. All right. Now, before we go any further, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button if you're over on YouTube, and interact with this podcast however you can on the platform that you're listening to it on. And I greatly appreciate it. So let's go ahead and jump into number one, which is open and honest communication. Communication is, it's the lifeblood of a relationship. Think about it. If you can't communicate, you're likely not going to grow, which means you're going to deteriorate, which means your relationship is going to fail. When it comes down to open and honest communication, I mean, this touches on all of the 5 things that are leading to divorce. But this really touches on the financial problem issue. It touches on a little bit of the excessive arguing and conflict, right? The more honest and open you are, it may lead to some arguments and conflict, but most of the time, conflict happens because there's miscommunication. So open and honest communication is a little bit different, and here's why. What you want to be able to do in your marriage and your relationship is go to your wife, and for the wives that are listening to this, go to your husband and just be able to tell him or her exactly what is on your mind without having to feel like you have to hold stuff back. Now, I'm not saying like you should just be able to go and unload every single aggressive statement that you've ever had towards your spouse. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we should be able to have very candid conversations about the things that are going on in our relationship, because we're in it together. All right. We're in it together. And when you can do that, you can usually talk about finances, which is a huge issue in marriage. And in 2025, it's not any better. In fact, it might be getting a little worse just because of the state of the economy, things of that sort. But I digress on that. The point that I want to make here is having open and honest communication is just going to be the best method of growing a strong relationship. Because if you can talk with one another, that means you can come to an agreement on a lot of things. In fact, my wife and I, we just got back from a Bible study earlier in the earlier in the afternoon, because that's when it was. And we were talking about the Bible study, and we were talking about our ideas and our beliefs and if it's the right move for our family. And this is, for those of you who don't know, I am a man of faith. I do believe in Yeshua or Jesus, and, I serve the kingdom. But at the same time, the walk that my wife and I are on has been very difficult in our faith. All right. That's just me being honest. And so we have not had open and honest communication about where we stand in our walk with Yeshua. All right. But today we were able to have a very open and honest conversation, and it was very cordial. It was candid, and we agreed on something. And my wife was even surprised, like, hey, we agreed on this. And I was like, yeah, we did agree on this. So I think that that's something worthwhile of noting, that when you learn to have open and honest communication and you start to agree on things, it boosts your marriage. It's like this confidence builder that we can deal with difficult things together. So then when you get into these conflicts, or when you get into financial problems, you can start to talk about those things. And that is just a huge game changer. I cannot stress enough about open and honest communication. But here's the deal. In order to be really good at open and honest communication, you have to have active listening skills. If you are not very good at listening to your wife, and if the wives that are listening to this are not very good at listening to their husband, you're going to miss each other. And that's going to lead to one of those issues that we're trying to prevent, which is the excessive conflicts or arguing, because you're going to feel like, oh, I'm not heard in the relationship and it's all about you, whatever it may be. All right. If you are challenged in having conversations with one another, then my recommendation is to go out and find some books that are going to help you have dialogue with one another, building conversations, because, I'm noticing that in our culture today, because of technology, we just don't know how to really hold conversations the best. All right. Either we find ourselves talking way too much about ourselves and no one else feels like they have an in the conversation. So there's no point in being in the conversation. Or we find ourselves not understanding how to navigate different questions to get the most out of the conversation. So we ask simple questions like, are you going to cook dinner today? Stuff like that, right? Where the answer is just either yes or no. And sometimes yes or no questions have to be asked because, that's just the way that life works, right? We need to be able to say yes or no to certain things. But then there's going to be other times where you want to ask what type of questions or how, or start the question with what or how, because now that's going to be something that requires a little bit more explanation, because you can't answer a question that starts with what with yes, right? Like, just think about that. You can try it out. If you ever want to get good responses that require more than yes or no, don't ask are or is, or start your question with are or is. Instead, start your question with what, how, when, why, who, explain this, stuff like that. All right. Those are really good ways of developing your active communication or your active listening, which is going to help you with open and honest communication. All right. Now, a disclaimer here is if you know that you guys are having a very, very heated discussion and you're not really going to be able to have open and honest communication at the time that you're trying to discuss something, then be able to be open and honest about that and say, hey, I'm not in a good place to have this discussion. All right. I talk about that often on the podcast, but I just wanted to make sure that it's kind of couched in here as well, since we're talking about communication. All right. Shouldn't be a surprise that communication is a huge number one, but number two on the key and critical things to growing a strong and lasting marriage: mutual respect and appreciation. Now, this has got to be the easiest way that I know to prevent infidelity and domestic abuse issues in your marriage, right? If you are appreciating your wife, and wives, if you are appreciating your husbands, it is going to be extremely hard to have abuse issues, because honestly, infidelity is a form of abuse. All right. Now, I won't get into that, but that is my belief. I do believe that infidelity is a form of abuse. It's a very negative one, but we'll call it its own thing for the sake of today's episode. All right. When you have mutual appreciation for your wife, you're not even going to think to hurt her in that kind of way, and vice versa. If you have mutual respect for your husband, for all the wives that are listening, you're not even going to think to hurt your husband in that type of way. All right. We have to build mutual respect for one another and appreciation. So how do we do that? Well, first, it starts with that key number one of open and honest communication. So you're talking with each other and you're learning about each other and you're growing. But second, is really about helping each other achieve the things that they're trying to achieve. All right. If, like, for my wife, she's reading through the Bible in the year. So my goal is to make sure that she has the time she needs in the day in order to read through the Bible. All right. So if the kids need to go to an appointment, or if she has something that needs to get done that I can do, and I can do it decently well, right? Then I offer to do it, so that way I know that she has the time to do what it is that she's setting out to do. And that's the beauty of partnership in marriage. All right. But really, learning to appreciate my wife is learning what it is that she, like the value that she brings to our marriage. If you don't know the value that your wife is bringing to your marriage, you're going to have a really hard time appreciating her. And this is where a journal comes in handy, because when you can write down the things that your wife is doing in your marriage that is helping move it forward, that's helping grow your marriage, hands down, one of the most valuable things that you can do to grow appreciation, right? I've done this for my wife. I continue to do this for my wife. Now, bonus tip, when you have a list of things that you appreciate about your wife, you can send those to her in text messages. You can send those to her in sticky notes around the house. You can let her know, and those become words of affirmation for those of you who are familiar with the 5 love languages. But you can't affirm something that you don't even know exists in the first place, or at least that you haven't observed existing in the first place. All right. Now, that's how you build appreciation. But let's talk about building respect. Now, I know that some people would say respect is earned. All right. And I would hope that before you said I do, you earned your wife's respect and your wife earned your respect. So what does this mean after you get married? Does that mean like you can't earn any more respect, or your wife can't earn any more respect? I don't believe that to be the case. I think that you can continue to earn respect, or at a minimum, renew or refine the respect that you have for your wife. All right. Case in point, my wife makes really good judgment calls. So when she has a point that she wants to make, I listen. Why? Because I respect what it is that she has to say about things that I probably have no idea on or idea about. And in one of the previous episodes, I talked about my wife sees things that I don't see, and I see things that my wife doesn't see. If I don't respect the fact that she can see things and sense things that I'm not even consciously aware of, well, I'm probably going to fail. And I don't want that for you. So you should definitely find ways of respecting your wife and finding what you respect about your wife. And for me, it's 100% the things that she can see that I don't see. And then I have to yield to her and say, okay, you know what? You're right. That is probably the better way of dealing with that. Because the way that I deal with things is not always the best. It's my way, and I like my way. I always think my way is the best way. But when someone else, like think about a mentor, when a mentor tells you something, you respect their opinion. It's the exact same way with our wives. And when you get to that point, it's going to be like, I can't even think of a reason for me to physically abuse my wife. And I can't think of a reason to cheat on her or, step outside of the marriage, right? No need for that, because I respect her and I appreciate her. And it helps grow our marriage. It helps it grow stronger. So if that's something that you have not done, then now's the time to start looking for ways of respecting your wife and appreciating her and showing her honor. All right. There's a great book. I think it's called Love and Respect by Emerson Eggriches. I think that's the name, but don't quote me on that. Just check the show notes or the description. I'll make sure that the link is down in there. The point that I want to make here is that's a great book for you to get started with. So that way you can have conversations with your wife and really love and respect each other. The third one, right? We're rolling on to number 3, shared values and goals. Now, I talked about it a little bit in the previous key point here about like my wife is reading through the Bible, so I want to help her get through that. But it goes further than that. Okay. My wife knows that I have some ambitions outside of my day job, and she helps me achieve those ambitions for the simple fact that I have time right now to make this podcast.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
And edit this podcast and deliver this podcast. So that way I'm, building your marriage and helping you grow. My wife, the reason I can do this is because of her, right? If my wife was demanding of me to do other things and she wasn't supportive of me taking time away from her, because she's not here right now. She's not in my office with me doing this podcast. So this is time away from her, but she supports me because she knows what my goals are. And my goals are to help husbands across the globe learn to love their wives every single day and become better men in the process. That is my goal. And it happens one episode at a time. Now, I have other goals and ambitions and dreams, and my wife has goals, ambitions, and dreams. And we help one another out. And every couple who does this, like of all the couples that I've ever talked with, and I asked them like, hey, what are the goals of your wife? Or what are the goals of your husband for the wives that I've talked to? They can always rattle off at least 3 of them. Why? Because they're having open and honest communication. They respect and appreciate each other, and they're sharing their goals that they have with one another. And the beauty of this is this helps with commitment. So the lack of commitment that was in the top 5 reasons for people getting divorced. Well, people who are helping each other with their goals and being flexible with accomplishing their goals, their dreams as a couple, they have more commitment to one another. They're looking forward to the future because a goal is something that just hasn't been achieved yet. And whatever it is that you have to do to go out and achieve that goal, it's going to require some support. It's going to require elbow grease. And I'm thankful that I have a wife who wants to support me in those things. And I hope that she is thankful that she has a husband who's helping support her in the things that she desires and the goals that she sets out for herself. And we talk about those things. And for those of you who are like, hey, I don't know what to talk to my wife about. Well, there you go. Tell your wife the goals, dreams, and aspirations that you have. Plan some goals together as a couple of what it is that you want to do. Doesn't matter what it is. Travel the world. And pick one place at a time. I want to go to the Bahamas, and then plan a trip, talk with one another, go to the Bahamas. The more committed you are, the more you talk about your goals, the deeper your commitment with one another goes. Now, this isn't the only thing that builds commitment. I do want to be very clear on that. There's other things that build commitment, but when you have goals, this definitely helps with the lack of commitment because it puts more skin in the game, figuratively speaking. All right. So those are the 3 things. You want to have open and honest communication. You want to respect and appreciate your wife. And you also want to make sure that you are sharing your goals and your dreams with one another, building #marriage goals in order to grow as a couple. And when you do those things, your marriage is going to become stronger. You're going to become more intimate with your wife. And ultimately, you're going to grow old together. And you'll be a blessing to your children and those around you. I hope you found some value in today's content. If you did, smash the like button, interact with the podcast wherever you were listening to it. If you need to get a hold of me, check the description box of the show notes. I'm more than happy to have a conversation with anyone who needs someone to talk to. And with that, until next time, I want you to find a way to love your wife every day. Peace.